Hi, I'm Nishikeet. Our group is covering the case of the disaster that took place in 1919 Boston. A giant tank filled with molasses burst open and more than 2 million gallons of thick liquid poured out like a tsunami. It flooded the streets, crushed buildings, and ended up killing 21 people and injuring 150 more. The main the main causes of the Boston disaster were later determined to be the weather conditions, the faulty structure, and the tank design itself. The the tank had been filled 29 times, but only 4 times near max capacity. The last fill near max capacity occurred only 2 days prior to failure. We also know the manhole had a really faulty structure. This was proved when a large-scale tank explosions were carried out, including a replica manhole, and nearly all of the experts came to the conclusion that the manhole was where the fracture initiated. The third cause was obviously the tank design itself. The tank design had a lot of flaws and was deemed as one of the biggest causes of the disaster, um, including tensile failure through a row of holes, shear failure of rivets, bearing failure between rivets and their holes. It was also found out that the steel had a low value of manganese in it, and hence the quality of steel was obviously not up to par. Summarizing the reasons for the failure of the tank was, well, obviously the poorly designed tank itself. Also, when they were testing the tank, they would just fill it up with water to check for leaks. But water and molasses have very different properties. Um, and this was instructed to them by the company treasurer, who is somebody with no engineering background and hence should have no control over how a tank is supposed to be tested. When they fill up the tank, they saw clear signs of structural defect, but the situation was ignored. When the tank started failing, a laborer brought an actual shard of steel from the tank wall to the company, and the company ignored the issue, um, which is actually pretty baffling. Um, as we can see from the causes, there were clearly a plethora of ethical issues involved, both with the engineers who designed and constructed the tank, and also the engineers who were working on inspection and maintenance. The engineers who designed and constructed the tank violated 77.2A and 77.2I. Negligence in public safety is paramount. While the engineers who were working on inspection and maintenance violated 77.2C, failure to report a situation that may endanger the public, 72.2D, failure to follow the law, 77.2B, failure to safeguarding life, and 77.2A, which is again negligence. Um, so if you were one of these engineers, what could you have done differently to, well, avoid this great disaster, right? Um, One, after realizing the design flaws, you could have just let it known to the company and let them decide. Um, or as soon as you find the design, you could just reveal it to the public immediately, even though that has some ethical issues surrounding that. Or the best thing to do would be to find the flaws, reflect it to the company, wait for the company's decision, and if the company does nothing, reflect it to the board. If even the board ignores the situation, though, you have to be a whistleblower and reveal it to the public for their safety concern. Um, Going over the analysis of all the certain alternatives, clearly the first one does not, just letting the company decide does not solve the root issue, and hence still creates problem. And letting the public know immediately violates 77.1.1 and 77.7.I.1. But the third one is definitely the best option out there, and hence would be the best solution, as you're not only safeguarding the public but also not breaking any ethical guidelines, and hence should be the one you should have hence should have been the thing carried out by the engineers. um as for legal issues, this was definitely a case of tort law. um the United States Industrial Alcohol Company owed a duty of care to the local residents of Boston for the 150 injuries, the countless damage to property, and 21 deaths caused by the incident, and they paid out uh, a lot of money, around 10 million dollars today, considering inflation, to the families of those killed. Anyway, thank you.